Hello and welcome to a new episode of Mostly Engineering and another part in our Enigma build series. So, welcome to the second season of our Enigma build project. Now, the build of the remaining 4 rotors is going on steadily. Most of the parts are done and the only things left to do is some little parts for the clamps and then assembly and wiring. And if you are new here and want to know how we built the first rotor, I will put a link to the playlist in the video description and the end card. So, the rotors are nearly done. It's time to think about the next component, and that will be our reflector drum. And here we run into a little bit of an issue because the reflector drum I want to build is a B Refelctor and we only have plans for the D one. And the D and B Reflector are completely different animals. So the D Reflector was a much more complex bit of machinery designed that the wiring was to be changed by the user. And the B Reflector, on the other hand, the wiring was fixed, what makes for a much easier construction. And this is one of the reasons why I want to build the B one. And the second reason is that the B Reflector was much more common. The D1 was a really late war edition and didn't really have any relevance anymore. So, we want to build a reflector, but we don't really have plans. And also, photographic reference is really rare. Most photos we have of the B Reflector shows it in the machine. So most of the features are obstructed by the machine. And if you want to see the backside of the machine, yeah, that's the only photo I could find. So not much we can work with. But luckily, we know that the D and B Reflector, they had to fit in the same machine. So we can take some measurements of the D Reflector, mainly the distance of the faceplate to the wedges and the size and position of the wedges itself. Then we know that it has to fit to our rotors and we have the measurements for the rotors. So the main measurements to ensure that it fits in the machine and that it works together with the rotors, we can take from these plans and from the rotors. And the rest we have to assume on the pictures. But if we guess a little bit wrong there, it will probably not be that tragic. So, as that said, let's go over to the computer and I show you what I have in plan. So, and here we have our reversing drum, 5 major components, so relatively simple part. And the most complex one is our central column, so let's start with this. And as you can see, the central column over here, and if we compare it to the central column of our rotor, you see it's basically the same part for the simple reason that I just copied all the measurements. This gives us 2 big advantages. First, we can also use the pins and springs from the rotor on the reversing drum as well. And second of all, copying the measurements also ensures that the reflector and the rotor fit together. On the back side, it's, of course, I adjusted the measurements over here. And then you see it's a little bit more simplified version as we don't need the key for the back plate over here. And then we have the 4 mounting holes for the sleeve. And talking about the sleeve, this is the part where we had to guess the measurements. So on the pictures you could see that the circumference of the reversing drum and the metering of the rotor are more or less the same. So I put the circumference at 60 millimeters and 1.5 millimeter wall thickness. And this is also a dimension of pipe I can easily buy. So when manufacturing, we just have to cut it to length and put the 4 mounting holes in it. Speaking of the mounting holes, there was a question, do we have 3 or 4 mounting holes? Because on most pictures you can't really see it. And if you see these pictures and we draw a line from the screw to the center, it looks more or less like a 90-degree angle. Also, this is hard to judge by just photographic reference. So I put 4 mounting holes around it. and you can also clearly see that the screws are not aligned with the top of the reflector, so I put them at a 45-degree offset. Again, seemed like a reasonable number. So then we have the pin plate to hold all the spring-loaded pins in place, and this is exactly the same part as in the rotor, and the back plate to cover everything up. So basically it is with this notch over here, and this notch allows us to register the reflector in the machine in the right orientation. And the notable thing about this notch is that it's above the B pin and not, as you might think, above the A pin. And last but not least, we have the wedges on the back. So on this ramp, 2 pins rest, and this allows the reflector to move back and forward so that we can change the rotors, and in operation it puts pressure on all the spring-loaded pins and therefore ensures an electrical connection. So again, relatively easy part, but probably very time consuming to machine on the CNC. So that's the plan. Now I have to order some material and then we can start manufacturing. And on this note, it's time to end the show. So if you have questions and comments, as always, let them down below and I try to answer them as quickly and correctly as possible. Please like and subscribe. And all that's left to say now is thanks for watching and see you at the next time. Bye bye.